In this video, I'm going to show you how to draw a metallic object using hatching and cross hatching and of course with graphite pencils. That's what we've been studying. So the first thing I do is I make a nice loose light ellipse shape. Right here I'm drawing with an HB pencil, but I'm using it really light. I am measuring the minor axis, the height of the ellipse, and then I'm going to compare it to the major axis, the width of that ellipse there. And I find that it goes a little bit more than 2. Now, the way I drew it, it's way too high. So I've got to trim that down. So I'm pulling that down and trying to get my drawing to match what I just observed with my measurement. So there, as you're seeing, it is the correct size, a little bit bigger than 2, almost 2.5. So I'm just cleaning it up a little bit. Now the next thing I'm going to measure is I'm going to measure the width of the top of the pot, again the major axis, and then I'm going to compare it to the height of the pot. And I find the height of the pot is just a little bit taller than the major axis. So I put a little mark there so I know where it is. Now I'm just going to swing my pencil around there using that gesture drawing to get the lips going down in there. And I don't worry about the fact that I have, 50 different lines. I'll choose the line later that I think is best. Here I'm just kind of cleaning it up a little bit, swinging my wrist around to get a nice curve. Sometimes I like to do that. And fixing that side as well. So the beginning of any drawing, you're going to start light, you're going to start loose, you're working with gesture, you're measuring, making sure everything is accurate. Now I'm trying to figure out where exactly that handle is going to go on the pot, so I was looking at where it was in relationship to the side of the pot. Here I'm checking the angle. Now you're probably seeing that the angle that I'm drawing is different than the pot that you're seeing in the photo. And that's because it's just the way the camera is set up. So you're not seeing through my eyes, you're seeing from a camera that's in back of me and to my left. So it's not going to look exactly the way I see it. That would be kind of cool if you could have your eyes. What if your eyes were like cameras? That would be perfect. Anyway, that's not happening yet. Right now, I'm trying to figure out where exactly those bolts go, and I'm just kind of feeling it out. And then I realize, yeah, they're on an ellipse too. So let me make sure they're on that ellipse. And then I'm looking at where that one bolt on the left is in relationship to the handle, and I'm discovering it's got to be over more to the left and a little bit lower. So I was playing around with that positioning of that one. So, you do that until you're satisfied you have them pretty much where they're supposed to be. Now I'm drawing the shape of the shadows, and I've got 2 shadows here. I've got a really super light one on the left, and then of course my darker shadow is on the right there. I'm just checking that angle of that shadow and the angle of the back of the shadow. Now when you do the shadows, especially the one that's higher, you always want to see where it is in relationship to your pot. So if you look at that shadow where it hits the pot, it's probably a little bit above the halfway mark there. Okay, then you can see that the angle of the handle of that shadow there, I'm just checking that angle of that handle of the shadow there, where it is on that flat plane. And I was seeing that the angle of the shadow on the surface of the table was different than the angle of the actual handle. So I was comparing the two. Now I'm checking that angle, and I'm also, looking at the negative space between the handle and the angles of the shadow. Now I'm putting in the line that divides the tabletop from my wall plane. And again, the image of the pot that you're seeing has a slanted line, and I'm drawing a horizontal line. That's more of what I see from my angle. So the next things I'm going to look at are I need to really block out the shapes of the reflections that I see in the pot. So when you're looking at something metallic, it's kind of like a mirrored surface with distortions. Uh, I love all those crazy, wild, abstract shapes that I see in metallic objects and, of course, in glass as well. And here, what I'm looking at is the distorted shape of the white paper that the pot is sitting on. Is that crazy? So those are the actual corners of the paper that I'm drawing there that I see. And of course, I'm seeing something just a little bit different than you're seeing on the actual photo of the pot. Now, the inside of the pot, it's not as glossy, like the metal isn't as glossy, it's not as mirror-like. Um, Now, okay, so look how fast I can shade. Okay, just totally kidding. I had to speed this up 4 times so I could fit this video in under 20 minutes for you. All right, I'm starting out with an HB pencil. I'm shading really lightly with that HB. You may want to start with an H if you like, but you know, with metallic objects, the reflections, you know, and the shadows on them, they have such high contrast that I know I'm going to need to get really dark, and I know it's going to take some time to build up my value. So I thought, let me just go ahead, start with an HB. So I am sweeping over my entire drawing, and you know, look at the directions of my strokes. The majority of them are going from the bottom left to the top right diagonally, but when I get to the shadow, I make sure I include some hatches that are going horizontally because I want to depict the horizontal plane of the table. Now, working on the back wall there, I'm just laying in some really, really light, pale shadows on the back wall because I notice the back wall is slightly darker than the plane on the top of the desk, the horizontal plane. All right, so I'm just throwing some shadows there into the handle, and basically I just block in, you know, all the shadows lightly, and I'm establishing the pattern of light and shadows. Now I really want to work on that rim. So when I'm looking at the pot, the really cool thing about the rim is it's thicker. It appears thicker in the front, and then in the back it looks thinner, and that's because of good old perspective. So I really want to work on that, and now I'm just fixing it up a little bit with that eraser, just making sure it's nice and clean, because it's really important when you're working with these metallic objects to have a really good, clean, clear edge. Okay, so now that was enough of the HB. I'm going back in there with the 2B. So I am working on, you know, just going through all the shadows and getting them nice and, you know, dark, just continuing to block them in. I'm very aware of the direction that I'm hatching, okay? So you'll see me change my direction, but it is really to reflect, pun intended, you got that, okay, anyway. It's really to reflect what I'm seeing in the direction of the reflections that I'm actually looking at. Now those little knobs, they're really fun to do. And I'm getting really precise in there with the 2B pencil. I'm drawing the shapes exactly the way I see them. They're just nice little focal points to have. So that, yeah, I did those a little bit more detailed. So still working with that 2B pencil. And pulling those, they're almost like stripes, like little vertical stripes, but they're on the inside, but they're stripes, but they have fuzzy edges. So as you're working and shading, you have to be really, really aware of, you know, what the edges look like of the shadows and the reflections, and you know, the edges of those bolts, you know, holding on the I don't think they're bolts, like rivets or whatever, holding on the handle. Those edges are really crisp, really, really clear. Okay, still working with that 2B, but now I'm pushing down a little bit harder. So I want to clean up that edge right there, and I want that edge to be nice and crisp and clear. Now I'm getting in some of those darker shadows on the front of the pot. Still working with the 2B pencil, just blocking them in. Now, one thing that you may want to do for this drawing, and it's what I'm doing here, is you may want to actually use the like the width of the side of your pencil. So the way I have my pencil sharpened is I took an X-Acto knife and I whittled the wood away. So I exposed I don't know, less than a half of an inch of the graphite, but I exposed quite a bit of the graphite. And that is so, well, one, I don't have to sharpen them so much, but two, you can use that width of the side of your pencil to make some broader strokes, okay? So yes, I'm hatching, yes, I'm cross hatching, but I'm also building up the value quicker by using the side of the pencil. So that's one thing a little bit different that I've been doing in this drawing, and it's because I want to build up that value, more quickly than I would if I was just using the point of the pencil. So this is still the 2B pencil, just darkening everything up. And remember, when you're working on these types of drawings, you're building up the values gradually. The majority of your time you're going to spend with, the HB and then the 2B. Oh, so my pot has these little lines that like curve around it. So I was doing that thing with my pencil, like swinging around the front of the pot. And now I notice that that side of the pot needs to get a lot darker. So I'm starting to darken up the side of the pot and working on that. You'll see later I come back and I end up really darkening up the sides of the pot quite a bit more after I back up and have a good look at my drawing. Don't forget, every once in a while, even though you see me like shading like crazy and working really fast, which I'm not doing, remember this is like 4 times the speed of how I'm actually shading. But it's really so important. Every once in a while, you got to back up, and have a good look, good look at your work. Now, one thing you can do is you can check your drawings. You can check your value by taking a photo of your drawing. So of course you're all taking photos of your drawings to hand them in to me so I can grade them. But you can also use your photographs as a tool. So I bet a bunch of you have already figured this out, but in case you haven't, it's a wonderful tool. When you think you're done, when you think you've gotten dark enough, take a photo of your drawing and then compare it to your metallic object and really be very critical with yourself. And if you got dark enough, great. But if you didn't, go back and work on it some more. So right now I moved on to a 4B pencil. So I'm getting quite a bit darker, first of all underneath with that cast shadow. And now I really need to get darker on that inside the pot, darker on the reflections on the outside of the pot. So when you're working on, the darker areas, within the darker areas, there are variations. So, on the front of the pot, you've got those really crazy, curvy, dark areas, with the points there. But then within those areas, there are variations within the darks. And of course, you may even see yourself reflected in the pot. Now, what I'm doing right now is I'm looking very carefully at the reflections in the pot, and every once in a while I see them move. Those are my black pants that I'm wearing. So, all right, so right now I use that 4B pencil. I got my darks a little darker on those rivets. Now I need to get quite a bit darker on the inside here. So I'm going darker with the 4B, darker on the handle. So high contrast lights and shadows, really light lights, really dark darks, high contrast. That's what's going to make your object look metallic. So that's really important that you're very aware of that high contrast that you're seeing. So right now, what I'm doing is I realized that I really needed to get darker on the sides of my pot because the whole thing looked just a little bit flat. I also had to fix the shape of that curve right in there and go a little bit darker in there as well. So that's what I'm working on, getting real dark in there. So just playing around with that area. It's still going darker with the side of the pot, a little bit darker with the shadow. So just pulling those darks together, most likely using a 4B here, just to get darker with the shadow. And I see a darker area in there. Here I go. Yeah, I got to get dark. Yes, much better. Okay. Cheering myself on. So yeah, I had to get figured out that I had to get darker in there. Also wanted to get darker on the inside of the pot, just a little bit. So at this point, I'm going back and forth a little bit between different types of pencils, depending on what I feel I need them for there. I pulled another kind of a vertical dark in. And here I think I'm going in there with a 6B because I really wanted to get darker. I'm just cleaning it up a little bit with an eraser. And I'm almost done. Just cleaning up the edges just a little bit. Going to fix that bottom shadow. Sometimes when you fix things, you got to go back and redo them a little bit. Just a little bit darker on the handle. That looks better. Show the edge of the pot in front of the handle right there. And then finally, I needed to just get a little bit darker along the bottom of the pot because it looked just a little bit too flat. And there it is.